John, and thank you, everybody. And hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Dan Nestle, as John had just said, and it's truly an honor to be here and talk about some things that are very important to us, and I think to everybody here and everybody who will be listening to this. Um, and it's really an honor to facilitate this important discussion uh, in this age of AI where everything's changing so rapidly. And I think we all have to think about this topic. It goes something like this. So as we embrace AI and it permeates our professions, how far do we go? How much do we delegate and how do we lean into our uniquely human strengths? One thing we can and should do is understand that we have this innate human ability to influence one another. So, focusing in on that, how can we be more influential? Fortunately, we have one of the leading experts on influence to speak with us today, the woman who wrote the seminal book on influence, the Influencer Code, and established the world's first graduate program in influencer marketing. She's gone from YouTube sensation to author to professor and to advisor. And her passion for teaching us about influence is positively contagious. And she really is almost obsessed with helping us to understand influence to make a positive impact on society. Please welcome me in joining to the platform, Amanda Russell. Amanda. See, Amanda is muted. So let's give Amanda a moment because tech happens, as we know. Seems Amanda's having a little bit of a technical difficulty. We'll be right with you. Thank you for your patience. If anybody has any questions in the chat for Amanda, in the meantime, please throw them up there. And as soon as she has her her camera and
Hi.
there she is. Okay.
I'm 1 second. So sorry. To be very candid, I ran to the restroom real quick and
I
it's
have
really,
just told everybody you had a technical difficulty, so thank you for your transparency
well,
and
that is a
honesty
technical
there.
but that is a technical difficulty. It's a especially when we're on Zoom, it's a very big technical difficulty.
Well, I've just given everyone this incredible intro for you, so the bar is pretty high, Amanda.
Oh no.
About influence and about your career. So let's just start off. I'm just going to essentially hand the floor to
Yeah.
you, Amanda, and just say, let's start with a simple question. What is influence?
So first of all, thank you very much for the great intro, and it's a pleasure to be here. Uh, I love this topic, and I think it's even becoming more and more. It's something I've studied for a long time, influence. And the question is, what is influence? And I think it's a term that gets very conflated. And when it gets right down to the very simplistic definition of it, influence is simply the ability to affect action. Action meaning the way that we think, not just a behavior, not just buying a product, but the way that we think, the way that we go through life. Everything that we do or say is influenced in some way. So two things: ability and action. Ability is, do you have the ability to, are you the force that's going to be able to create that change or that desire or that decision or that thought? And then action meaning behavior, thought, whatever, whatever it is we're trying to create. And I think that it's one of the most powerful forces that runs the entire world, but yet it gets conflated with things like social media and attention and popularity and followers and all of these things could be indicators of influence, but the two are not necessarily the same thing.
That's I think it's important to understand all of this, but in the context of the digital age and this kind of
Mhm.
paradox of influence in the age of AI, maybe we can bring it a little bit, a little bit more, I think, connected to these challenges that we're facing. So,
In a
yeah,
sense, it is very paradoxical, right? Like as AI expands, human connection becomes more valuable, not less. And at least that's I truly believe that it's going to become, or it, in a world where we're more and more digital, the only thing I think there's a term for it called sentient. The one thing that differentiates humans from any other species is the fact that we have emotion, we can feel things, and the idea that we can feel is the most influential, it's the most influential force that it trumps everything. Um, it trumps like AI is all about data analysis and breaking down data and doing things more efficiently. And yet when it comes to human connection, that's the one thing we crave. And I think we talked about this yesterday, Dan. It's like if you're you could have all the data in the world, but when somebody that you trust tells you something or gives you an indication, you go with them. Somebody could, you could see three different doctors and they could tell you, you need to take this medication and this medication and this surgery and that surgery. But as soon as your partner, your spouse, your daughter, your mother, your brother tells you, I really don't think that's the right path for you. I think you really need to continue like trying for something else. All of a sudden you go, oh, okay. And we like to think because we're human, especially in a B2B world, that we make rational decisions. And AI is used to help us with rationale and making logical decisions. But humans really are driven by emotion. We use data, we use rationale to back up our decisions. But at the end of the day, even if you have a list and you use AI to make a list of pros and cons for, let's say, why you should buy this house versus another house, you could see on both sides of the fence. But if you're like, if you have an inclination towards one house, you're going to tend to skew the data to match what you really want. All of a sudden, you're kind of adding pros to one side and adding some cons to the other. We all do it. Um, I think the a really interesting way to look at influence in general, just to turn back to the definition, is attention plus trust. We confuse influence with 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 attention, meaning like if we were all aware of something. We're now in an age where we have all the information. It's the trust that's becoming the most important part. So if we I'm trying to think of how to put this. If we used to be in an age where content was king. Now content is not king. Now we have more than enough information, more than enough content. The differentiator is the human connection. How do we create that feeling, that emotion, that human connection that makes people trust us?
can we dig into trust for just a second here, Amanda? Because when we talk about what makes us human and we talk about how to wield influence, clearly there's a relationship that has to be in place, right, with you and the person who you want to influence, or if you're a brand, with the people that you want to buy your product. There is the the precondition of influence is trust, I think, as you're saying. Do you think that increasingly, especially as AI permeates our lives, right, that authenticity, like the role of authenticity, the role of unpredictability, even in our humanity and the way that we behave, how how important is that going to be, and what role does that play in influence,
Are you asking the sort of how do you form trust? And I think
essentially?
like yes. So if and that's one of those things it's a very it's an easy, it's like the word influence. It's a very easy thing to say, oh, build trust, what is trust, what influence, but then breaking it down, like what is trust. And when I ask, and especially when I'm in an executive audience and you ask the definition, okay, everybody, what is trust? And the kind of answers that immediately come back are usually things that I call them all, I bucket them all into this category of experience. Credentials, accolades, awards, where you went to school, testimonials, years of education, all of these things. And yes, those are all one part of the trust equation. The other part is this term benevolence, which it's taken me a long time to sort of put wrap my head around how to make an equation or simplify something that is very abstract, like influence or trust. And benevolence is really the feeling that someone has your best interest at heart, that they make you feel something, that you are connected to them, you are resonating in some way. And that's why I kind of was trying to go with the doctor example and the person example, is that benevolence, if you can build benevolence with somebody, that trumps all experience. That's why, what is the ROI on the relationship that you have with your mother or your son or your daughter? You believe they have your best interest at heart. And so if you can create that feeling, and then you can build trust. And that's relationships that's showing up consistently. That's right here, right now. That's looking across from the room face to face and seeing the expression, seeing that I'm right here with you right now. Am I happy? Am I sad? Am I look disinterested? Am I on my phone? Like the face to face connection, you AI cannot create emotion. It cannot, it doesn't have emotion. It doesn't have feeling. We have feeling. We have emotion. And so I actually think that we're going to get to a place where the human, or we not get to a place, we are there, and it's going to get only further important, where it's almost going to be like, when you have like Oprah's book club on a book, or like a stat, we're also going to have like written by a human, only by human, like written by
Yeah.
me, no AI. And like that idea, or our customer service is real humans, not bots. Like I think that that is going to, because that's what's going to create trust, and that's what people are craving. And
Yeah.
so how is AI, is it positive or negative? Well, honestly, it's so cyclical. Like if we look at history, history is just continues to repeat itself in different ways. And I heard this conversation in a meeting a few days ago, and it was a technology guy, and he said, it's really only technology, and I forget how he put it, but it was like, it's really only technology if you'd remember how it was done before. And I was like, that's so true, because think about it. AI is not new. Technology is not new. Like the light bulb was technology at one point. The car was technology at one point. All of these things were technology, and they enabled us. They changed the world, and they changed how we live in this world, and
Yeah.
what we need to learn and what we need to do as humans. And we evolved, and we were taught different skills. Like right now, we don't, nobody's mourning the fact that we are not learning to ride a horse and buggy, right? However, our education system and our workplace system is still set up that we are in this weird hybrid zone of like, well, should we still be learning long division? Is this going to take over our skills? Like we're iterating and evolving. And I think AI is actually going to make us be able to be more human, to do the things that AI can never do, which is to
Yeah.
feel, to connect. And that's where the sweet spot is going to become in businesses that are able to do that, to use AI to do all the things that AI can do and do better than we ever could do, and to use that time to build deeper relationships, to build deeper connection, to higher level
Yeah.
human thinking. That's stuff that no animal and no AI machine could ever do.
Yeah. In my last corporate role, we talked about how, implementing AI actually allows everybody who uses it to move up the value chain, to be able to take care of those day-to-day tasks so that you can then focus on the more important, and let's just call them human matters. Um,
Mhm.
Theoretically, right, that would increase your time to spend on cultivating relationships and on being face to face with people. I don't know how that's panning out in reality, but that it sounds to me that you're saying that that is a core part of what we need to do for influence is to be in front of people more, right? Is and do you think this kind of hybrid world that we're in, this distributed, like even what we're doing right now, where there are people watching on Zoom, you know, is this an influence builder and is this a trust builder? You know, is it helpful?
I think I think that there's something about face-to-face connection with a real human that there is. I think that's a huge trust builder. It builds and also builds psychological safety. It builds emotional resonance. You know, having the camera off. I think that being on a Zoom meetings all day long when you can plug in digitally and people have their camera off all day long, I don't think it builds. Even though being on Zoom all day is not exciting, but there is something to be said about the human to human connection of like having your camera on or seeing the expression. Like uh, you can't recreate it. That's what sentience is in humans, is we're able to have a shared experience. And actually, let me give you an example of sort of like shared experience and something that only humans can do. Um, there was it was a couple years ago, and there was this woman that I knew, and she was giving a presentation for a big financial wealth firm, and she was very, finance savvy, cerebral person that I didn't know her very well, but I just, just not warm and fuzzy. And I just always, very not a lot of small talk. And she was giving a presentation, and she talked about she took the presentation in a different direction, and she actually said, I was praying for this, and what actually helped me, she's demonstrating a point. My I got a call that my mom had passed away, and the entire room just like everyone all of a sudden not on their phone. People are just all of a sudden um completely engaged, and we saw a different side of her. She became much more human, and you saw the human side. She's describing where she was in her kitchen, and like the fact that I'm sitting here years later talking about this woman and I can recall the story, and that I developed an empathy for her, a trust for her, that all of a sudden now we're all engaged. Now we're all listening to the story, and now we're like no one's on their phone. Now we're like, okay, the takeaway is real. Whatever that lesson is, she could have said it without ever giving that story. I would not have remembered it. I mean, I don't think anyone else would. But that is something that's going to become even more and more powerful. So yes, AI can even help you craft, stories, but we want to know. I think don't you want to, I mean, don't you want to know if you are, I mean, for example, online dating. I use dating as an example all the time in my classes, because not just because it's something that, yeah, of every age, but I realize that the one way you can get to know humans on a very personal level is if you can talk to them about what matters to them in their personal intimate life, whoever that, their spouse, who they're dating, if they're single, whatever. And I learned that quickly when I was training actually on bicycles at like 5 in the morning in New York City. And it was a really fascinating, it was a bunch of like finance men in the park that were also former athletes, and couldn't talk to them about anything. But as soon as you could, that was my way to break through. Oh, are you married? Do you have a what? Where is she from? All of a sudden people like to open up and talk about that. And that is the reason I say that, is because as businesses, as organizations, as thought leaders, if you want to build your career, the only way forward is to be able to resonate, because we are all, as much as we like to think we're all like very special and all unique, we are not. We are all more alike than we are similar. All products, services, now everything's a commodity. I mean, so what is the differentiator? It's not really like subjectively product attributes and, okay, one restaurant has, maybe you think the food is better, maybe they do, maybe you think the atmosphere is better, but like on a macro level, we there's no new idea, there's no new product, new service, like we're a new person. It's not even about being different. I think it's about creating that feeling of connection, of distinction. Um,
Yeah.
And that I
I
think we need to
yeah.
really, I think that the human level of us, we should be able to put more time to and put more time towards that. And like you said, we're theoretically supposed to be able to have more time to do these things. I think this is a really poignant time in history where where great leaders in great companies are going to start to actually recognize and create infrastructure around that. And those that don't are going to be very vulnerable because what do you do with all that extra time? It's like, you see the teenagers now, they're like, well, they have it very differently than when I was a teenager and can do things on their apps all day long. And I'm like, but yet they're actually spending less time playing with their friends or chatting or doing reading or whatever. I'm like, so all of this is to be efficient to do what? This is the time in history to be, okay, can we be conscious about, okay, we're doing all of this to save time to do what?
It's um it's a key question. I save time to do what? Save time to work on our influence, perhaps. These kinds of things that that we need to be, echoing what you're saying is to just lean into what makes us more human.
Mhm.
You mentioned, I loved your point about telling stories, essentially storytelling,
Yeah.
and be having that creative story, that story to connect with someone, to make that one-to-one connection. That's embedded in human, in the human experience, and it's why stories are so important. And apart from understanding how to tell a story, and I think everybody can really learn how to do that. You know, as we wind this down, as we have a couple of minutes left, if you had to kind of name just the key skills that people need in this age of AI, in whether they're in a corporation or an organization, or flying solo, what are the key human skills that they need to build the influence, to become the influencer of their world, whether it's a small community, or an organization, or whether they want to be an Amanda Russell. Like, what are the core skills? And we already talked about storytelling, that maybe we can leave everybody with.
Number one, I think, is empathy. That comes to mind, and it's taken me a long time to say that because I come from a background where that term didn't even exist. And I would have thought it was really fluffy and soft. But I think that the greatest leaders in companies, empathy is to be the ability, if you want influence, if you want to succeed in human skills, the ability to understand where the other party is coming from and understand their motivations, understand their goals, how are they incentivized, what they're dealing with. That's going to help you understand the way of the land. And that's something that AI won't be able to do. Empathy and critical thinking, meaning no longer are we answering questions. We need to start questioning answers. And and realizing that, whatever, I mean, there's this whole idea of, fake data, this and that. I'm like, at the end of the day, you need to be able to walk into any situation and look at the puzzle pieces and ask the right questions and question the answers that have been given, because it's so easy to be on autopilot and to default, and we've seen what has happened when we do that. And and it's easy when data is given to us to go, okay, let's lean on the data. I think it should be actually the opposite, which I'm sure not everyone agrees with, but that if the story in real life, like looking at the qualitative story of what has happened, look at the story and look at the data. If the story and the data conflict, lead with the story. And I created a model on measuring marketing and measuring brand sentiment, using qualitative and quantitative, that basically trains people on how to use story. And story doesn't just mean like the girl walked down the street. Story means like if you have just run a whole rebranding initiative, then taking metrics, before, during, after, but also, okay, we took these metrics, we measured on all these key indicators, but let's talk to some of the people that work for the company. Let's talk to some of the customers. Now how do you view? How has your view changed? That no data can match that, what what we see. right?
Mhm.
And oftentimes data can't tell that story, but you can say, you know what? Um, I I actually really didn't like the I kind of stopped going. I didn't report that I stopped going. I just, it's something just didn't resonate with me anymore. Nothing negative. I just wasn't just didn't really resonate. So yeah, I guess I just, kind of forgot about it. And data is not going to necessarily capture that sentiment.
Yeah.
Um, so I would say empathy, critical human skills, empathy, and I
Critical
think that's an
thinking.
all great
Mm.
leadership and all great influence and critical thinking. And just to close, as I'm looking at the time, I think to wrap up, we are at a time where AI can literally write our emails for us. It can predict our behaviors. This is the time that we're in now. And it's at this time, I think that it's our humanity that becomes our biggest distinction. And the future belongs to those that can are not to those who can outperform AI, but to those who are constantly curious enough to learn how to use it most efficiently and then use it so that they can more authentically build human to human connection. I think that's the true paradox, and that's the true opportunity in the age of influence in the AI age.
Well, thank you, Amanda, for wrapping that up in such a tidy little bow. And if anybody has any questions or anything you want to ask Amanda, please just reach out to her at amanda@amandarussell.co, not .com, .co.
Taco, yeah.
And, and
And I also want to
yeah,
say to you, thank you as well. And any questions, to please write us. Dan and I are actually starting a podcast show on this. Dan is the AI expert. I'm the influence. So you've got a good combination here. So please feel free to reach out to us. We're really excited about this.
great.
And thanks to Logictry for this wonderful event that I love to be a part of.
Yes. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you.